Hello beautiful people, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I have a what's for dinner. I have a few really delicious recipes that I want to share with you guys. So let's go ahead and jump into that first recipe. So on the first night, I am making my version of white chicken chili. It's a super simple recipe, but it is so delicious, and I will never make white chicken chili any other way. But you're just gonna start out with some chicken broth, or you can use any kind of chicken base that you prefer. And then I'm just adding in a couple of chicken breasts. I just use 2 normally. Sometimes I use 3. It just depends on how many people I'm feeding. And I am gonna be feeding 3 adults and a baby. Next, you're gonna add in whatever white beans that you like. I usually add in navy beans and great northern beans. And then I also like to add in a couple of cans of corn. I typically like to use white corn, but they didn't have any, so I just picked up regular old yellow corn. And then I am gonna drain the corn and the beans before I add them into the chili. Next, I'm just gonna add in a couple of cups of water just to kind of make the broth go a little longer. And then now for the best part, I'm gonna add in this cilantro cooking base. This stuff is so delicious. I wanna find recipes that I can use this in besides my white chicken chili because it is just so flavorful. It just brings everything together and it's just so good. I ended up using about a whole jar, which is typical. I kind of just eyeball it just depending on the way that it looks, but I usually end up using 2/3 to a whole jar of the cilantro cooking base. Now you can season this however you like. I'm just adding in a little bit of salt and pepper. And then I also add in some garlic salt and some onion powder just to give it a little extra flavor. Honestly, the cilantro base on its own is more than enough flavor. So if you don't want to add in the extra flavorings, that's completely fine. So you are going to cook this on low for 6 to 8 hours, just until your chicken is cooked all the way through. And then you're just gonna shred your chicken. It is soft enough to shred inside of the crock pot, but you can also take it out and shred it in a bowl, whichever your preferred shredding method is. Once it's all finished, I like to top with some shredded cheese and some tortillas and a little bit of sour cream, and it is chef's kiss. So on the next night, I decided to make Olive Garden's Zoupa Tuscana. This is a copycat recipe, so it's gonna be a little bit different, but it is so delicious and flavorful. And if you have never tried their soup, I definitely recommend trying it for yourself. But you're just gonna start out with another chicken base, so it can be chicken broth, chicken stock, whatever. And then you're just gonna add in a cup of water. Next, you're gonna add in your drained Italian sausage. It was about halfway through dumping this in here that I realized, crap, I forgot to drain it. So I decided to drain the remaining sausage just to get some of that grease off, but it actually turned out fine, so it was okay. Next, you're gonna add in about 6 to 8 diced red potatoes. You can add more if you like, but that's what I ended up using. And then you're gonna add in about half a stick of butter. And you're gonna bring everything to a nice rumbly boil. Now you're going to shred in about 1/4 of an onion. You can dice it. I just like for it to be very fine in this soup, just so there isn't like chunks of it. So I'm just using like a grater and I'm just shredding in that onion. And then after you have done that, you are going to add in your seasonings. So I'm just gonna do some garlic salt, some salt and pepper, some onion powder, and a little bit of Italian seasoning. Now you're gonna add in a 1.5 cups of heavy whipping cream, and then you're just gonna stir those ingredients to combine well. Now that that has been simmering for a while, you're gonna add in your kale. You don't wanna add your kale in too early because you don't want it to get too soggy or too wilted. So I would recommend probably about 15 to 20 minutes before you're ready to serve to add in your kale. And I ended up adding in, I think, 2 to 2.5 stalks of kale. Again, that can be at your preference. And then you're just going to bring that to a boil again and let it cook the kale down. I will have all of the recipes listed down below, so if you decide you want to make them, they're easily accessible, so you can just copy and paste it. But this is the finished product. This turned out so delicious. And then I ended up pairing it with some French bread, and it just turned out so good. This is so flavorful, and I highly recommend it. All right, y'all, as always, TikTok made me do it. I'm making the TikTok pasta. So if you don't know, you're just gonna need some feta. They recommend the feta block, but I actually really like the way that the feta crumbles turned out. You're gonna need some tomatoes, some olive oil, some seasonings, and then whatever your preferred pasta is. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just spraying down my baking pan with a little bit of cooking oil, and then you're just gonna add in your tomatoes. I tried to add them in all nice, but then I was like, screw this. I'm just gonna dump them in there. And I ended up using, I think, about half a container of tomatoes, but you can definitely use more or less depending on your preference. And then you're just gonna separate them to have a little hole in the middle to add in your feta cheese. So first I'm just gonna add in some plain feta. I picked up 2 different kinds, and I am so glad that I picked up this Mediterranean feta. It tasted so good once it was melted down. And if I make this recipe again, which I anticipate that I will because it was delicious, I will definitely try to find this Mediterranean feta cheese because it just had, I don't even know. I need to look at the ingredients to see what it added to the feta, but it was just so flavorful and delicious. My goodness, my mouth is literally watering right now just watching this. But once you have the feta added, you're going to drizzle some olive oil on top of the tomatoes and the feta cheese, making sure it's not completely drenched, but giving it a nice coating. And then of course it wouldn't be an Andrea meal unless I added some garlic salt. So I'm just adding a little bit of garlic salt to the tomatoes just to give them a little extra seasoning. And you can really add in any seasonings that you want. I also evidently added more cheese. But once you have all your ingredients added to your baking dish, you're going to pop that in the oven and you're going to bake it. I think I ended up baking it for about 35 minutes. You just want to make sure that the cheese is nice and melty and that the tomatoes are a little bit wilted and starting to brown a little bit. Oh yeah, and then I added a few of the red pepper flakes. It actually did not make the dish spicy at all, but it complemented it so well. So if you're afraid of heat, don't be, just add a few sprinkles and it really does bring all the flavors together. So while everything is baking in the oven, you're also going to boil your pasta, and then you're going to reserve about 6 to 8 ounces of that pasta water because you are going to add it to everything once the pasta and the cheese is all completed. And I ended up having to basically dump everything back into the pot that I boiled the noodles in, just because this baking dish wouldn't fit all of the pasta, because I did use the larger bow tie pasta, which I think paired very well with the like cheesy sauce, but you can use whatever pasta you want. I think penne with pasta would be really good with it too. So here is the TikTok pasta all plated up. Again, I paired it with some of that French bread that I had left over from the night before. This recipe turned out so good, and TikTok made me do it, and as always, they didn't disappoint. But I just want to thank you guys so much for hanging out and for watching today. If you like this video, make sure you give it a big old thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for being my kind wheel.